Let's face it, all of us have dealt with heartache at one point or another, and my next guest is here to coach us through that in the kitchen of all places. Please welcome certified holistic coach Laura Lea.
Hi.
It's so good to see you
so
again.
So good to see you too. Thank you for having me.
Anytime I get to hang with you is a good time. But this
Agreed.
is a really unique thing that you've kind of carved out for yourself, is really helping people through heartache in the kitchen with recipes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to do a single serving cinnamon roll today, which I didn't think was possible.
I know.
Yeah.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Absolutely, right? Okay, so let's start the recipe, and then I want to dig down into kind of where this came from too. So you only use a couple of things to start out, is that right?
Totally.
Okay.
When you want a cinnamon roll, you don't want to have to go through all of the yeast and the rising, especially when you're going through a difficult time.
Yeah.
You're upset, you're stressed out, plus you might not want to eat the whole batch, you know, no judgment.
Speak for
if
yourself,
you do.
Laura. Speak for
exactly. So this is my 2-ingredient dough. I actually use it throughout my cookbook in a couple different ways. It's just self-rising flour and some full-fat plain Greek yogurt, and you mix that together and it forms this dough.
Beautiful.
And then we're just going to form a little ball and put a little bit of flour on top, and then you'll just roll it out. And you'll have your oven preheated to 350 degrees. And then, you can keep sprinkling some flour on top.
Yeah.
And the great thing is, it really doesn't matter how it looks, because it's going to taste awesome. I use this to make a personal pizza in the book as well.
The same dough?
Same dough, personal pizza, and to make some biscuits. So yeah, you just knead it a little bit more and it becomes a biscuit consistency. So here's our filling, and this is a little bit of unsalted butter. You could also use coconut oil if you are dairy-free, and you could also use a dairy-free yogurt as well. A little bit of cinnamon and a little bit of sugar.
And that makes kind of like show that there. It makes kind of like a paste a little bit, right? And you just use that to then kind of, beautiful.
Yeah.
Roll it out onto the dough. Okay.
Exactly. And so it's actually easier when it's not melted, because then it'll kind of run off. And so you'll just spread it out on your dough. And normally I would spend a little more time measuring the dough out, but this is the idea. And then really you are just going to roll it up like this. And if you need to have a flat spatula with you, you can. And then we're just kind of going to shorten it out like that.
And that's the magic
Throw
here.
it on our baking dish.
Okay.
And then you are going to bake this for 15 to 18 minutes in the oven, and it's going to look nice and yummy and gooey on the inside, and really has those traditional cinnamon roll vibes.
And what's the topping that ends up going on top of this?
Well, this is just powdered sugar plus unsweetened almond milk, but
easy.
you could actually use liquid coconut butter. It's more expensive, but if you want a healthier alternative, it's a great icing.
Okay, so that's in your new book here. So we've got these, congratulations, by the way, your third cookbook.
Yes.
Okay. So we've got recipes for an aching heart. Just tell me, I feel like this is a mundane question. How did this come about? Like, we've all had some heartache, but why for you was this so important to do this project?
No, not mundane at all. I went through a divorce, and then not too long after, I went through a really difficult breakup, and it really felt like a rock bottom emotionally. And it was the first time where I said to myself, okay, whatever I've been doing to heal in the past hasn't been working. And so I needed to sort of scrap all the numbing and coping devices that I'd been using, socializing, drinking, eating food that isn't going to serve me.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. I think so many of us will go to like the pint of ice cream in the freezer, or go to the bar, or do whatever it is because you just want to numb the pain.
Exactly.
What was can you pinpoint that moment where you're like, wait, I have to do the opposite? A lot of us know that, like, we shouldn't do this, but you went a step further to know that this had to be part of your healing. What was it that turn that light on?
Totally. I moved out of an ex's house in a snowstorm in February of 2021 and woke up the next morning, just woke up crying basically. And it was so painful that I think the juxtaposition between how I wanted to feel and how I was feeling was so bad that it was a catalyst for me to say, okay, starting today, I have to get creative. Starting today, I want to actually understand what is happening to my body and my brain physiologically and psychologically during grief, because we can mask it in all these different ways, but the reality is we actually need to meet our bodies where they are.
Yeah, that's so good. And I mean, what are some of the other things that we can expect to see in this book? Because let me just say, and I don't say this very often, I have not had a recipe of yours that I didn't like. Or let's put it in a positive. Every recipe I've tried of yours is amazing. And that doesn't happen in a cookbook in totality. I feel like sometimes it's like an album where, I'm not a musician, but sometimes I'm like, did you really want to put that song on the album? Like, you just throw it in there. Literally every recipe turns out great and tastes great. So how did you go from like, I want one cinnamon roll and not a sheet of cinnamon rolls, to doing this whole cookbook?
Thank you. Well, that I get from my mama for sure. She is the flavor factor. But you know, with this book, I wanted it to still be able to be used by the people in my community who are cooking for families. So you will see multi-serving recipes, and you'll also see about 26 single-serving recipes. So there's a combination, but the theme throughout is just a new level of ease, affordability, sustainability, just simplicity in a way that even my previous 2 cookbooks, as much as I love them, don't have. Plus, there's a ton of scientific information here about how you can heal your heart as well.
That's great. So Recipes for an Aching Heart is out now, along with your other 2 cookbooks. Where can we find more recipes from you?
Yeah, so you can just go to my website, llbalance.com, and get all the info there.
Perfect. And then other tips, it's not just recipes like you said, there's so many other tips from kind of the psychological side, even though you're not a doctor, we'll just say that, but you've learned an experience. So any final tips that you can speak to someone that may be going through this right now?
Yeah, definitely. And everything I do is backed in research and science and was actually vetted by a licensed therapist, and that's all in the intro of the book. But the main thing is to start with self-compassion. Recognize that you are so worthy of the time, attention, and care that you don't necessarily feel like you are during this time. So start practicing self-compassion. The rest kind of flows from there.
Perfect. Well, you can go to SamiCone.com for this delicious cinnamon roll recipe. Of course, Recipes for an Aching Heart, llbalance.com. Laura Lea, great to have you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.